Hello and welcome to another Monday episode of Addiction Recovery. Hope, capital H, capital O, capital P, capital E, and resources. My guest today is Mark Latham. Hi, Mark.
Hello.
And we're going to get into the steps here in a second, but we're going to start off by announcing once again that the Southwest 2018 Southwest Utah Recovery Day is this Thursday, September 20th, at the Town Square down off 50 South Main, St. George, between 4 and 7 p.m. And it's a family event. Bring your kids. There'll be music, games, food, sponsors there. It's a wonderful event. I think this is the 9th one. You might know, Mark, but I think this is the 9th annual one, and it's an amazing event where good people trying to better their lives are out in the community, sharing the message of hope. So we'll get straight into today. We're going to talk about all 12 steps, and we're going to break them down, and we're going to fly through them, and so you can kind of get a feel for each step in one episode, the Reader's Digest version of them. But first of all, my guest Mark is going to introduce himself, and I hope share a lot about his story of recovery. He is an inspiration, and he's, I would say, probably the most disciplined person I've ever met in the 12-step program. He is very intelligent, smart for me. He says big words, but he does the program right, and he lives recovery to the fullest, and it's a joy to be around him. And so, Mark, take it away. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, that's really hard to always start without saying my name is Mark and I'm a recovering alcoholic and addict.
Right.
It's kind of like the way we always start one of these type of discussions. But yeah, my story is I've actually only been really recovered for 3.5 years. I don't have a whole lot of recovery under my belt. Yeah, but I had over 30
One day
years.
is a lot of recovery.
That's true. It is a one day at a time program. There's days don't really count. It's just one day at a time. And I had over 30 years of active addiction. It was not always the deepest, the worst. I mean, there were times I pulled out, but there were those times I never really got completely free of my addictions. I was always being hampered by something of an addictive nature. I think even today I still find things in my life that I have to worry about and I have to look at and say, hey, I've got to get there, that type of situation working on. But in that 30 years, it was a very destructive actions. I went through 3 divorces. I had children that I wasn't there for, jobs that I've lost, incarceration. So it was multiple things, and it was a lot of learning, by being beaten to a pulp. Yeah. And it really took a toll on me. And in the end, I finally had to accept the fact that I always looked at it and thought, I couldn't really become addicted to alcohol. Never really thought I could. Yeah. But, when you get to a point where you're drinking such an amount that to quit was actually causing seizures and such, I didn't, I realized that I really had a problem.
Yeah, it's progressive. You start and you can drink only weekends and not after 5 p.m. And by the time you know it, after years, you're drinking at 9 a.m. Well, at least I was.
Yeah, I was drinking at 2 in the morning.
Yeah,
yeah, because I couldn't go 4 hours without having a drink. I could only get about 2 to 3, maybe 4 hours of sleep at the most, and I had to get up and get a drink. Yeah. That's how bad it was. And in those type of situations, I then realized there was no way out of this. And I went through the AA program, I went to rehab centers, I did all that before in my life, and finally realized, I knew that the program had to be worked in a spiritual nature because I had tried it in other ways, white knuckling it, just going to meetings, relying on others.
All outdoors.
Yeah. I'm going to, do all kinds of different activities. I'm going to just change my lifestyle. I'm going to, try a whole new set of friends. I'm going to do all these things. I thought if I change these things, it would make a change. Didn't realize that it'd really make a spiritual change in who I physically looked at myself as being.
Sure.
I had to really become a son of God. And when I finally looked at that and said that I had an older brother that can help me, Jesus Christ, that's when it made the difference for me. And that's what I think most people have to get to that point. You know, they're not looking at recovery for other people who want them to, or because I'm going to go through a divorce, or I'm going to hurt these people, or I'm going to lose a job. It's at a point where you realize there's no more continuing down this road without total destruction. And the only person who's going to get me out of this is going to be a higher power of some sort that they want to have.
Right.
I know that for myself, because I did have a spiritual nature when I was younger. When I started to look at spiritual things, I had to realize that I already had a testimony of a type of religion. And when I looked at that religion, that was the predominant religion in the area, LDS, Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And when I decided to go that direction, it seemed like it filled that emptiness, because that's what the emptiness was. It was, I didn't have that in my life again. And I turned my back on it and thought, well, that's just not for me. It's, it's something I was taught. It was something I learned as a child, but now I'm an adult and I can make my own decisions. And that's where the change actually came, was when I realized that for myself, I had to have something in my life other than my own self-will.
I love that you said for myself, because as you know, you were AA. You probably know the AA as good or better than the LDS program, and better than me by far, because I was only a part of the LDS program for predominantly. But in AA it says that God as you know Him, or God as you understand Him, and for people that are just trying to find recovery, and if that's the way that works for them, we're happy to have them get sober that way.
Absolutely.
There's nothing wrong with it.
There is absolutely nothing wrong with it. We all grow spiritually, and you have to then continue to grow spiritually. When you first start into recovery and you first start working these steps, the God of your understanding is going to be that God of understanding the first time when you work these steps, and you're in the depths of addiction. And as you work out of those depths of addiction and grow, your understanding of your higher power grows.
That's a great point, because we've got to keep growing. We can't stay idle. That's one thing about addicts is that once in recovery, you've got to challenge yourself. You can't just let days go by without trying to, or weeks go by and months go by, but without trying to find something bigger, something not to replace anything missing, but it's got to be about growth and doing things uncomfortable, like radio shows.
It's always it's a journey of discovery. And each day is supposed to be part of that discovery. And you don't take anything for granted. Always look at and with that eye of questioning and wanting to seek more knowledge. Whether it's about yourself, it's about your higher power, it's about your direction and what you should take your life into, and how you should characterize who you are. That all comes in that moving and growth. I would say that you got to keep taking steps forward, because no matter what, that addiction is right behind you. And if you don't keep moving forward, it will catch you. Yeah.
And you just reminded me of, and when you say yourself, and we have to 100% as addicts, if we're looking at other people and wondering what they're doing wrong, we're in trouble. We need to worry about what we're doing wrong, and try to be a better person for us, and stay off of, I call it, stay off other people's sides of their street.
Yeah. Well, if you watch guys who run, a 100-yard dash, they don't look left and right to see where the other guys are at. They're running straight ahead. They're not worried about where everybody else is at. They're making sure they're moving toward that goal at the end and hitting that wire as fast as they can. So that's what we've got to look at and say, wherever the people are at, that's their decision, but I've got to keep moving in my direction. And that's the important thing with this program, is there is, I believe that my Lord Jesus Christ and my Father in heaven have a direction for me, and if I stay in tune with the direction they want me to take my life, and I keep moving that direction, that is the life that works best for me. The life that I decided for myself didn't end up too good, and I wasn't happy. I mean, I'll say I had momentary points of happiness, and exceeding, oh wow, this is great, but they always had a very deep hole at the end of them. And I have not had a regret for anything I've ever done during recovery, and how much time I've spent and the efforts that I've gone through. It's always been worthwhile.
Right. I love it. Well, Mark, thanks for sharing a little bit about yourself. I'll also say you've in your 3.5 years, short 3.5 years, I look back upon my years, and I was in the first meeting you came to when you started your recovery this last time 3.5 years ago, and I won't share a lot about it, but I'll share that you can do anything you decide to do. Mark has grown his business. He repairs appliances, I believe,
yes.
refrigerators, dishwashers. Everything, and he's on the ball. He answers phone calls. I mean, it's just the things that someone in recovery does. You're doing it to the top of your level, and I've watched you grow your business to get new vehicles and get moved up, and it's pretty cool. And that's what people can hope for, is it when they start into recovery. They may not have nothing. Most people that come into recovery, I always say, if they have a wristwatch, they may have too much. They usually need to lose it all, but everyone's bottom's different.
Yes. For me, the aspect of my business and what I do with my occupation does not define me in any way, shape, or form. It's not something I enjoy doing it. We have to all look and say, what's a talent, what's a skill that I have? Yeah. And when we apply that, that's what happened with this business, in the sense that I had worked in a company doing this before, and it was something I was able to do, and I knew that this would be something I could do as my own business and take that risk. Yeah. And because I thought at the time there was a personal, when I looked back in my life and I was making that assessment, I found that there was a personal defect whereby I would always, when I was being employed, looked at it and said, you know what, he's taking advantage of me.
Yeah, right.
So I thought, how would I not get into that situation again? Well, being your own boss, there's no one cheating you other than yourself. So that basically took care of that issue. And I don't really, it's all about making what I need today. I think about the money I make as the manna, like the bread. The bread. But I can't save it. I can't look at it and go, oh, it's going to be there. And it's always, I just have to take what I get today and use what I have today. And I do, I'm not saying I don't save and everything else, but at the same nature, I don't make it okay, because I have X today, I'm going to get Y tomorrow. Right. That's always, whenever I've made assumptions about where things are going to be, and then the things don't happen, I get a lot of resentment. I get a lot of anger. Right. And those are things that always happen because I let my pride say I'm entitled to because I did. Yeah. And if I'm just entitled to something today and that's all, then I'm happy my biggest thing is I start the day sober and I end the day sober. Huge. That's the biggest thing, and that's all controlled by me. Yeah. And then whatever happens in the middle there is controlled by my Father in heaven. Yeah. And whatever comes my way because of, doing my part. That's why we got to continue to work in the steps, is because, like you said, in my 5.5 years, if someone would have told me when I was barely starting into recovery that, Heston, you will have what I have today, and I would have said, I won't need another thing in my life. I would be so thrilled and I wouldn't complain. But you get there and you start to complain and you want a little more. And it's very, very important to stay grounded. So that's a good point. Thanks for bringing that up. Well, one thing is when I say, if you say that to somebody, you can't, or when I heard it, and even today, if I hear somebody say that, I'm looking at it from a spiritual standpoint. I'm not going to have the house on the hill or the car they drive or whatever objects. And you don't care. I don't care. There are certain people that I've admired and I've looked up to because of the spiritual nature they have in their life and how they, I'm not a scriptorian. I've tried to. And then when people are, I'm just like, wow, I someday might be there by reading and studying, but I might not. Me. But at least I'm going to try. That's the big thing, is I'm going to read the scriptures and ponderize and do what I'm supposed to do to try to get there. That's the biggest thing, is to try. Well, thanks for sharing again, Mark. All right. We're going to get into the steps, 12 steps. Holy moly, this is going to be fun. One shot, let's see. One shot, break it down, how you feel about each step. And I'm going to read the steps and let Mark share, and if I need to, if I feel like something pops in my head that helped me on that step, I'll talk to, and then we'll go through these 12 steps, and so someone can that's looking to get into recovery can say, break it down for me. How do I do this? And so we're going to give it all in one episode. We've gave all the long versions in our last 12 episodes. Today we're going to go through them all. So let's start. Step 1, Mark, and I put keyword is honesty. Right.
And I always have been going the LDS program and then the AA program. So I'm going to read those. And well, I know the LDS is admit that you are powerless to overcome your addictions and that your life has become unmanageable. And in the AA program, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. What's important about that step?
Well, I think it's that we have to understand our powerlessness more than anything, that it's not an idea of control. For me, a lot of the times early on when I was in, programs, the first time I ever attended an AA meeting was because I had gotten a DUI. So to me, it was like, oh, okay, just going to learn how to not drink or get in that car and drive again. It wasn't that I had a drinking problem. It's that I had a using my keys problem, and I was always looking at it from that standpoint. And every other time it was always looking at how can I get my drinking under control, not realizing my drinking would never be under control or any addiction. Because I have an addiction personality. Doesn't matter what it is, I will never have it really under control. I've always got to be watching it.
Right.
And the other part is that, in the LDS 12-step in particular, it talks about that, you of yourself. You're not doing this for other people. You're not doing this because other, a court system says you have to, or all. You're there because you've actually realized that this is what you want for yourself. Yeah. And it has to be what. Sometimes
that's how it starts. You're forced to be humbled, but they find themselves like I did. I was kind of forced. I had no chance, and I made the decision to go to the meeting. And then through other people, I realized my life was unmanageable. I cannot manage life. I cannot go a whole week without calling in sick. I can't. I'm late to things. I'm not paying enough attention to my children. My life. I lost jobs. I was divorced a couple of times myself, bankruptcies, had 2 of those, and my life was unmanageable. And how I mean, obvious.
Well, I've always felt, I've gone because people have said you have to do something about this, and I'm like, okay. But as an addict for myself, I've seen others, we're very good at manipulating people to get what we want. So if I'm like, okay, that's what you want, that's what I'll do. I'll give you what you want. And then after a while, they're like, oh, good, you're giving me what I want. And I'm like, okay, now I'm going to get what I want.
Right, exactly.
So
you're doing it for
I'm going to take back some of my what I want because I've been giving you what you want. And that's where that's going to end up. If you're doing it for other people, sooner or later, you're going to feel like, hey, I've been giving you what you want. Now, I'm entitled to what I want. Yeah, and then you get into that pride, then just becomes a problem and will destroy you.
Absolutely.
The whole idea of recovery you're working on.
That step 1 is honesty. Step 2 is hope. My favorite word, capital H, capital O, capital P, capital E. Tell us a little bit about the LDS programs. Come to believe that the power of God can restore you to complete spiritual health, and AA came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Yeah,
both of those, have a nature that we're saying that I can't do it by myself. I need to have another power. I know that for myself, I've tried it where I've said, okay, I'm just going to get out in nature more. I've done all those type of things. But ultimately, you have to say, I can't do it by my own want. I tried the white knuckle saying, you know what? They say that if you don't do it for 28 days, a bad habit will go away, and that in 28 days of not doing that bad habit, it'll go away if you replace it with a good habit. So I tried hitting the gym every day for 28 days and not hitting the bottle or any other substance that I was hitting and just hitting that. And no. It was still a white knuckle ride because it was... Ultimately, I had to give myself up to something that was greater than me. Working out was not making me greater than me. Yeah. And that's an impossibility. It had to be something greater than myself. And then again, you have to realize when you look at your higher power, that can't be a power that you've created of your own will, because then that's just you. How can that be greater than you if it's something you've created? So it comes down to, you have to realize and look at it and say, there is truly going to be a power in the universe that has nothing to do with you. It is and it has something to do with the universe, and that is what it is. And that's what you're going to say, that's what's going to get me through this program.
Yeah, I love it. Step 2, hope. And a lot of people come into addiction recovery. I think most come in and they're hopeless. and it's a tough, scary road, but get to a meeting, and I promise you, I can assure you, you will get hope if you're there for the right reasons, if you're looking for answers, and you'll find them.
Yeah, even if you hold on to other people in the program.
Yeah,
in the early days, that's what gets you going.
Jump on their coattails.
It's going to take a while for you to actually put your head around what we're talking about when we talk about, even if it is, God and Jesus Christ. It's going to take you a while to understand who those individuals are.
That's why it's good to get a sponsor. You can jump on someone else's testimony of their program, their success, and you ride it until you get your own. We'll go to step 3, and this one's trusting God and decide to turn our wills and our lives over to the care of God, the Eternal Father, and His Son, Jesus Christ. And in the AA, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. And this one's the first decision step. And I wanted to bring up that, like you said, on step 2, is try to and understand that I can't do it. I need something else. So I've heard of step 2 and 3 saying, I can't, or step 1, 2, and 3 is I can't, he can, I think I'll let him. That's what I've heard of it.
Yeah, well, this one, I've always looked at it and said, this is when you're going to make the decision that you're actually going to work recovery. And it's a decision. And a decision is not really as much an action as it is a conscious, I want to do something about something. You used the analogy that I always loved was there's 2 frogs sitting on a lily pad. One makes the decision that they're going to jump. How many frogs are living on that lily pad? Still the same 2 because he only made the decision. He didn't actually jump.
I love that.
That step 3, a lot of people get hung up on because they feel like I haven't done step 3 and I haven't done step 3. How will I know when I've done step 3? And I always say it's when you're working step 4.
Yeah, right, when you're moving forward.
Yeah, when you move forward. Because the reality is this 2-part step where this is only a decision, where do we put into action? It's actually all the way up in 11. So it's quite a way.
But you got to do them in order.
Right.
You can't go from 1 to 8. Like most people want to go from step 1, my life's unmanageable, and now I want to apologize to everyone.
Right.
Can't do it.
No, you can't. Everything has to be done in order.
Yeah.
And there's a reason why. It's because, like I said, you can't turn your will over to God yet because you don't even know what your will is, and you don't even really have a good understanding of God yet.
You don't even know who you are if you think of step 6 and 7.
The next thing is you're going to start working the steps. You said, okay, I found a plan of action through steps 1 and 2 and 3 that I'm going to do 4, 5, all the way through.
Step 4 is truth. Make a searching and fearless written moral inventory of yourself. As LDS in AA made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. What's good about truth?
This is the one that separates the men from the boys because of the fact that it's a toughie. And a lot of people then get hung up on this one too because they're like, it's too daunting, it's too hard.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing on this one is I did it as a list at first.
Yeah.
Some people love to do it as a life story and all the rest. I listed all my regrets and my resentments.
Mm-hmm.
And went through the people, places, things, actions that I regretted, or the people, same thing, people, places, and things that I have resentments against, and made that list and worked on those items that way. That's what worked for me. I had a sponsor that did it with me in AA. I've been through a sponsor with the LDS 12-step, and both of them are a little bit different, but ultimately you have to get a system, and you have to. Main thing is it's got to be written down.
Write it down. That was my favorite thing about that step. Written.
Right.
Write it down, or it isn't real. It didn't happen if it isn't written down.
Right. Well, it's a conscious action that makes you have to. Then that's the acknowledgement.
Right. When
you put it down, and you can always in your mind rationalize and move it and change it and make it moldable. But when you write it down, it's fixed in place.
Love it. Step 5: confession. Admit to yourself, to your heavenly Father, in the name of Jesus Christ, and to proper priesthood authority, the exact nature of your wrongs, and AA, admit it to God, to ourselves, and to another human being, the exact nature of our wrongs. Mark, confession.
Oh, well, this is the one that actually relieves you of a lot of the guilt and shame.
Yeah.
Guilt and shame is not something, it's not a spiritual nature that's normal. It's a negative spiritual nature. And it's something that the only way to really get rid of it is to let it out. I mean, it works in psychology. It works in all types of religions. I don't care what religion it has. They tend to have a nature that you have to go and you have to admit your wrongs to another person.
Yeah, all that shame lifted off your back.
Right.
Thousands of pounds of stress.
Right. Well, the whole hiding in the closet of feeling like if no one knows about my problems, then they won't, look at me differently and everything else. But when you let it out in the open and you realize people aren't looking at you negatively,
No, they're trying to
then
help.
you don't have that anymore.
Yep.
Yeah.
Step 6, change of heart. We got 6 minutes to go over
Right on.
6 more steps, so we're going to fly through them. Change of heart. Become entirely ready to have God remove all your character and weaknesses. We're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character.
Well, this is when we've admitted it all, but we actually admitted it to ourselves. We're willing to let it go. A lot of people don't want to give up those things because it's part of what identifies them, and it also helps them hold on to regrets and resentments.
Yeah, I always say that your behaviors are the problem, not the drug itself. The drug is what you use to get away from reality, but your behaviors and the way you act is
Right.
is your biggest problem.
Mm-hmm.
And then in step 6, you find that out. And then step 7, humility. Humbly ask Heavenly Father to remove your shortcomings. Humbly asked Him to remove our shortcomings is where we ask Him to take our defects of character away.
Well, also the places that we felt like we didn't do what we were supposed to do, that times I wasn't there for my kids, the times I wasn't there in my life, the shortcomings that I feel like, how can I ever make up for the times and the things that I did during my addiction that other people, will they ever forgive me for?
Yeah.
Well, first I have to let somebody else say, you're okay with me.
Yeah.
Because in the next few steps, we're going to be working on making those people okay with me.
That's true. I always say step 6 and step 7. Some people get them confused. They say this is the same thing. I say, well, it's like getting a flat tire in your car and then still driving on it.
Yeah, you got to be okay with you about those shortcomings, and you got to make sure that God, your higher power, whoever, makes they say, yeah, you're okay.
Yeah.
With them.
Number 8. We'll go 8 and 9 in a jumbo. So I'm going to read real fast. Seeking forgiveness. Make a written list of all persons you have harmed and become willing to make restitution to them. Made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. Step 9, restitution and reconciliation. Wherever possible, make direct restitution to all persons you have harmed. In the AA, make direct amends to such people except when to do so would injure them or others. And I just want to point out in these steps, you have to prepare for step 8. You can't do step 9 automatically. You have to prepare, and then you go do step 9.
Yeah, there's a reason these steps are farther on, in my opinion, because of the fact that if we're doing them early in our recovery, we're usually doing it because we want a cause and effect. Yeah. We want people to feel good about us, so I'm going to do the things that I know people want. But here we're saying I want to be good with other people because it makes a better world, it makes a better me, and it makes a better another person. Because there are people who will not give you that.
And most of the time, the people have said they're sorry so many times that people don't want to hear it anymore.
Right.
But once you've seen that change in them through steps 1 through 8, and then they come to you at 9, they're like, okay, I believe you this time because I've seen you change.
And well, there are some people also who you very badly would like to have their acceptance, but still, even this far down your recovery, will not give it to you. I mean, they may never give it to you.
And that's okay.
And that's okay. But if you do this early and they don't give it to you, you may walk into a relapse.
Sure. Step 10, daily accountability. Continue. These are the maintenance steps, 10, 11, 12. Daily accountability. Continue to take personal inventory, and when wrong, promptly admit it. Continue to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, we promptly admitted it.
Well, this is just how the way you live your life from now on. That's
every day you make an accountability list.
This is the way normies live their life.
Yeah, normies. I like that. That's a phrase.
This is the way normal people live their life. They don't walk around with regret and resentment.
Yeah, and if I love the part because I do it all the time. I promptly admit it when I'm wrong, and I step 10 a lot of things really quickly because I don't want that shame on my back. I get it off. And step 11, personal revelation. Seek through prayer and meditation to know the Lord's will to have the power to carry it out. Sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for His knowledge of His will for us and to have the power to carry that out.
Yep. Like I said, this is a continuation of step 3 now because we've gotten our houses in order. We've cleaned our yard. We've cleaned ourselves with other people. We've righted ourselves with our Lord and Savior. And all that's good. Well, now we can actually get it. If you're LDS, you understand now your ability to feel the Spirit is more there than it was before because you've gotten in tune with it through all the other steps.
Prayer and meditation.
And now you have the power. By working those other steps, you now have the power and the knowledge of how to apply
Your whole way of thinking
what that's coming, because you were able to do through the power of God all these other steps.
Yeah.
Now the next thing he's going to tell you, you're going to have the power to go out and do, which could be completely something you've never even thought of doing.
That's right. Step 12, service. Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of the atonement of Jesus Christ, share this message with others and practice these principles in all you do. And in AA, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we try to share this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Mark, you're doing service right now.
Yeah.
You're always doing service.
Well, because you realize sooner or later that your weaknesses have become strengths, and there's other people who have those weaknesses.
Share the message.
If you share the message, they have strength to overcome those weaknesses.
I love it.
And the only way you're going to do it is by sharing the message and working the program
Which
with
helps
others.
keep you sober.
Other people got me sober. Now it's my turn to get other people sober. The doors were open when I needed it there, so I need to make sure the door is open when somebody else needs it there.
I love it. So the 12 steps, Mark, just one more question. Is there a time limit when someone should be done with 1 through 12?
No.
Everyone's different.
Everyone's different, and even when you do it once, you'll go back and you do it again for another situation.
That's what I tell everyone. I think when you feel like you're stuck and you're not moving forward, go to the next step. Finish the steps, and then you'll be able to work them as the rest of your life.
Right. Just always realize that you're always going to be doing something to spiritually grow.
It's never going to be perfect.
It's going to be a program in the step.
Yeah.
You can always relate. Something in your life works in one of these steps.
That's awesome.
If you go back to what you know and what you've done and apply it to this next problem or challenge that you have, the steps will get you through and over that problem and challenge.
Sweet.
No matter what it is.
Yeah. Well, that's the Reader's Digest of steps 1 through 12, the 12-step program. We did it, and we finished barely on time, maybe a little over, but we thank you for listening. We've reached over 24,000 people in these 12, 13 short weeks, and we are getting the word out there, sharing hope, and that's what I appreciate you coming, Mark. Thank you. We appreciate you listening, sharing this, commenting on the posts, liking it. Every one of those helps us reach more people, which I do this for free. I just want to help people, you know? So thanks again, Mark, and we'll talk to you all next Monday.
Bye-bye.